Let's jump right in. When you hear the phrase Gilded Age to describe the American 1880s, what comes to mind? Probably incredible progress, booming industry, dazzling fortunes, right? But was it really a golden chapter for America? Or was something else going on just beneath that shiny surface? That's what we're going to dig into. I mean, at first glance, the picture is pretty amazing. This was the decade of sprawling railroads stitching the whole country together, of new millionaires building massive empires out of steel and oil, and of course, inventions that were literally going to change the world forever. It really felt like an era of just limitless opportunity. But this is the question that gets to the absolute heart of it. Was all this progress actually shared? Or was that glittering gilding just a super thin veneer hiding a much more complicated and frankly a much more difficult reality for most people? Come on, let's peel back that layer. So, first up, let's talk about the engine that powered all of this industry. I mean, this was a story of incredible, world changing achievement, but it was also one that came at a pretty staggering human cost. The speed of the change was just mind-boggling. The economy wasn't just growing, it was absolutely exploding. This giant machine of industry was running at full tilt, creating wealth like no one had ever seen before, and really giving off this vibe that America was on an unstoppable path straight to the top. And that leads us to the most important question, doesn't it? This machine, it needed fuel, and that fuel, it was human labor. So what was life actually like for the people running the engines, laying down the tracks, and sweating it out on the factory floors? And this slide just lays out the two different Americas so clearly. On one side, you've got the tycoons, the so-called captains of industry, living these lives of just unimaginable luxury. And on the other side, well, you have the vast majority of workers who are facing incredibly dangerous conditions for very, very little pay. This huge gap, it wasn't an accident. For a lot of people back then, it was just seen as the natural order of things, a kind of social survival of the fittest. Yeah, this quote from our source material really just sums it up perfectly. The Gilded Age wasn't just about creating wealth. It was about where that wealth was going. It was concentrating at the very top, creating this massive and growing divide in American society. All right, now let's see how this same dynamic played out in the nation's cities. Millions and millions of people flocked to urban centers, all looking for opportunity. But what they found, well, it was another story of really stark contrasts. Can't you just imagine the excitement? People were pouring in from farms all across America and from overseas, drawn in by the promise of the city. For the very first time, city streets were literally beginning to glow with electric lights. It must have felt like you were arriving at the very heart of progress, the center of the American dream. But here we go again, we have to ask, what was the reality behind all that glitter? Once you stepped off the main avenues and away from those bright new lights, what did you find in the neighborhoods where most people actually had to live? And this one word, right here, is absolutely crucial to understanding daily life for millions of people: the tenement. This was home. Not some sparkling hub of innovation, but cramped, often unsafe apartment buildings where entire families were struggling just to get by in really difficult, unsanitary conditions. So that was the fundamental truth of the Gilded Age city. It was a place of blinding light and deep shadow, of massive opportunity for a tiny few, and of incredible hardship for the many who lived and worked right alongside them. And this theme of contradiction, it just keeps going when we look at technology. The 1880s was an era that literally invented the future we live in now, but it was also an era of some pretty profound social division and conflict. I mean, just look at this timeline for a second. The pace of change is just breathtaking, isn't it? Electric lights, the first steel-framed skyscrapers, even the personal camera. These weren't just small tweaks, they were revolutionary technologies that were fundamentally reshaping how people lived and how they saw the world around them. And yet, all of this futuristic progress was happening against a backdrop of intense social friction. It seems like the very same forces that were driving all this innovation were also straining the fabric of society, maybe even to its breaking point. And you could see the fallout everywhere. Political machines in the cities often ran on pure corruption, while the frustration on the streets would boil over into actual conflict. But in response, powerful new movements started to rise up, especially labor unions, demanding better wages, safer conditions, and a political voice that just couldn't be ignored anymore. And we're not talking about just a few isolated incidents here. The scale of this unrest was massive. We are talking about hundreds of major strikes all across the country in just this one decade. It was a period defined by widespread organized resistance to the harsh realities of this new industrial economy. So, after peeling back that gilded layer, how should we really think about this pivotal decade? It's pretty clear it wasn't one simple story, but instead a really complex and conflicted legacy that we're still dealing with. This table here really just lays it all out, doesn't it? Two sides of the very same coin. For every story of dazzling wealth, there's a hidden story of deep inequality. For every iconic invention, a story of brutal labor. And for every tale of urban growth and ambition, there's a story of corruption and social hardship. That's the central tension of the Gilded Age, right there. And that leaves us with one final, and I think really crucial question. Just think about it for a second. Debates over wealth inequality, the incredible power of technology, the rights of workers, the very promise of the American dream. How many of the issues that were forged in the fire of the 1880s are we still grappling with today?